Hi everyone, my name is Jenna Porter and I'm a junior in the dietetics program at UND. Today for Cheap, Fast, and Healthy, we're going to be making a Tex Mex Chicken and Zucchini one-pan meal. One of my favorite things about this meal is that most of the ingredients I already had in my pantry or fridge. Also, it's only made in one pan in under 30 minutes, so that makes for easy cleanup and fast preparation. So the first thing that we need to do before we start prepping our ingredients is wash our hands. So to properly wash your hands, what you want to do is turn on the water and rinse your hands. Make sure they're nice and wet. Then get your soap and you want to lather for about 20 seconds. Now while you're doing this, you want to make sure to focus on the backs of your hands, your wrists, underneath your fingernails, and in between your fingers. Washing your hands is really important during this time and during this pandemic because you want to prevent the spread of disease. And when you touch your face and when you're cooking and preparing meals, it allows for the fast spread of germs if you don't wash your hands. Also, you want to wash your hands after going out in public places and touching things that other people touch, like gas pumps, cash registers, and door handles. So it's been about 20 seconds. So I'm going to rinse the soap off of my hands and dry them with a clean towel. Okay, so for the first part of this recipe, we are going to dice an onion. I have a medium yellow onion here, and I already cut off the ends, which is the first thing that you want to do. And then you want to cut the onion right down the middle. Now when I cut vegetables and prepare other things, I always use a clean cutting board and I put a washcloth underneath my cutting board. That's to prevent the cutting board from slipping while I'm working with my fresh ingredients. Okay, so now that the onion's cut in half, you want to take off the outer peel. I'm just going to peel that off, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. I'm going to move these off of my board so I have a clean space to work. And so to dice an onion, what you want to do is you want to make 2 horizontal cuts. So I'm going to do that now. You want to try get as far back into the onion as you can. And then you want to turn the onion and make vertical cuts. Try to make as many as you can. That'll make for smaller dice. And then I'm going to turn it back horizontally and I'm going to chop it now. And then while you're using your knife, make sure that you have a firm grip and that your fingers are curled back in a C to protect your fingertips. And as you can see, the onion comes out nice and diced. And as I get to the end, I'm going to really protect my fingers and curl them back. And there we go. There's one half of the onion. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Again, making 2 horizontal cuts. And then as many vertical cuts as I can. When grocery shopping for an onion, you want to make sure to pick an onion that has a smooth, shiny skin and that doesn't have any soft spots. Again, I'm just going to make cuts to dice it while protecting my fingers. And there we go. And then I'm just going to go in and cut any of the larger pieces that I see. But you can skip this step if you want because most of them are pretty fine. And then I'm going to put my onions in this prep bowl for later. Onions are a great source of vitamin C, folate, vitamin B6, and potassium, so they're really healthy for you, which is awesome. And then when you store onions, they can be stored cut in the fridge for 7 to 10 days. But if it's a whole onion, you want to store it in a cool, dark, dry place, and those can be stored until they start to get soft and squishy. So next, the recipe calls for 2 bell peppers. I already prepared one. I used a yellow bell pepper. And now we're going to do red. So what you want to do with bell peppers is you want to rinse them first. Rinse them in cold water and then just get off any dirt. And if there's a sticker on the outside, make sure to take that off before you start cutting. And then for this part, I'm going to use a small paring knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the core of the pepper. So you want to insert your knife at an angle and just cut around the stem. This should remove most of the seeds from the middle. Okay, now this should pop out like that, and you can see that the seeds, most of them have come out. Now we're gonna cut this, and I'm gonna switch knives to the serrated knife because it's longer. I'm gonna cut it right down the middle. And then you can see that the pepper still has some seeds in it, so I'm just gonna tap it to get those out, and then I'm gonna take out the kind of white fibrous part here. So I'm gonna cut it again and then take out the white fibrous part. Like that. I'm gonna do that again to this side. And now we want this pepper to be diced, so we're gonna cut it into thin strips. So to do that, just lay it on its back and cut thin strips. And then you're going to take those strips and line them up like so, and you're just going to dice like so. And then keeping them all the same direction, all the strips the same direction when you're dicing makes it easier to handle them. So I'm going to do the same thing. Take off the white fibrous parts and then cut the pepper into strips. So when you shop for bell peppers, they should be firm, and just like the onion, they should have a shiny and glossy outside to them. And you can use any type of bell pepper you want. I chose red and yellow, but you can also use green. Whole bell peppers stay good in the fridge for 4 to 5 days, and the green ones last even longer. They last for about a week in the fridge. And then when you store them, you want to make sure that they're dry and in either a plastic or a paper bag, because moisture will cause peppers to spoil faster in the fridge. Now I'm moving on to the second half, cutting out the white part, putting it into strips, and then I'm gonna dice. Again, lining them up. Now they don't have to be perfect. If you have uneven pieces, don't worry about it because they're gonna be sauteed later. And then the final part here. So peppers are a great source of vitamin C and potassium, and then most, if not all, vegetables are great sources of fiber, which is important for a healthy digestive system. Okay, so we're done dicing. Now I'm gonna put these into the same bowl as my yellow peppers. We're gonna move on to the zucchini. So I already prepared one of the zucchinis, and this recipe calls for 2, so now we're gonna move on to the second one. So for zucchinis, what you wanna look for is it should be about 6 inches in length and 1 to 2 inches in diameter. And you also wanna rinse off your zucchini when you get it. Make sure that there's no dirt or anything on it. And then to prepare this, we're gonna chop it up. So you wanna take off the top part and the bottom part. So that's what I'm gonna do first. First with the top, and then the bottom. And then we're gonna make it cut lengthwise right down the middle. One more, there you go. So it's in 2 halves now. Place those halves face down onto your cutting board. And you want to make 4 cuts lengthwise again to put the zucchini into strips, like so. And then line up your strips kind of like the peppers and chop them into pieces. Now these can be bigger chunks, they don't have to be super tiny. And there you have your diced zucchini. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other half. So when chopping for zucchini, you want to make sure that the skin is intact, it shouldn't look wrinkly, and there shouldn't be any soft spots. And zucchini can last for a while in the fridge, 1 to 2 weeks. Again, keeping it dry so that it lasts longer. Okay, so now that we have those prepped, I'm gonna put the zucchini in with the other one. And we're gonna move on to preparing our canned and frozen produce. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna get a can of black beans. These are reduced sodium, which is one thing that you wanna look for in the grocery store. And then I'm actually gonna dump these into the strainer and then rinse them, and that'll get any excess sodium off, which is a really great tip. So I'm gonna dump all the beans in there, and then with just cold water, I'm just gonna rinse them, getting any excess sodium and juices off of the beans. And I'm just gonna leave these in here until we're ready to use them. And then next we're gonna open up our petite diced tomatoes. And then I'm not gonna rinse these because the tomato juice adds flavor. We're just gonna drain them. Getting the juices out. And that looks about good. So when you're shopping for canned products, you want to make sure that your can's not dented and that it's not leaking. Dented cans can affect the integrity of the product and also make it expire faster, which is what you don't want. Now, canned and frozen products are great for quarantine because they last longer and you don't have to worry about them spoiling. And it also means less trips to the grocery store. Okay, and then we're gonna move on to our corn. I'm using frozen corn because it's what I had in my fridge, but you can also use canned corn. And so we need a cup of corn. I'm gonna measure that out. And this corn won't go into until later, but I'm just getting it ready. So there's about a cup. Okay, so now we're ready to start cooking. So I'm gonna turn my stovetop on to medium-low heat. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil into the pan. There we go. And then I'm going to move it around so that it covers the bottom. I'm just going to add a little bit more because I don't think it's enough. There we go. And we're going to put our bell peppers and our onions in so that they can soften a little bit, and we're gonna saute them, just stirring them occasionally. We don't need the lid on at this point. So I'm gonna put all my onion in, and then my bell peppers. And we're gonna turn this up, and I'm gonna take this spatula and I'm just gonna kind of coat them in the oil so that they're ready. Now we're just gonna let this sit for a couple minutes, and while this is cooking and softening, we're gonna prepare our chicken. So I'm gonna use a separate cutting board, again with a washcloth underneath to prevent it from slipping. And I used frozen chicken and I thawed it in the fridge so that it would be ready. Again, frozen items are great during this time because They last longer, so it means less trips to the grocery store and you don't have to worry about them spoiling. Now with the chicken, I'm gonna cut it into 1-inch pieces using a separate knife. Like so. Now again, this doesn't have to be perfect either. Just so that they're kind of uniform in size. Now the reason that you want to use a separate cutting board is to prevent cross-contamination. Cross-contamination is when you transfer bacteria from uncooked meats or anything raw to ready-to-eat produce or foods. And then with chicken, the main bacteria that can be cross-contaminated is salmonella. In salmonella, the side effects of that are vomiting, diarrhea, and fever, which are really unpleasant. So you always want to make sure that you're being careful when you're working with raw products. If you don't have 2 cutting boards, always make sure to prepare your raw items last. That way you don't have to worry about using fresh items on the same board afterwards. So that's why it's a good idea to, if you have 1 cutting board, just prepare your raw meats last to prevent cross-contamination. Okay, last little bit here. Okay, so I'm gonna take, this part is just a little bit of extra. Now I'm gonna take this and move it over into our pan where our vegetables are warming up. Now I'm going to move the vegetables kind of over to one side. Again, just mixing them. I'm going to add a little bit more oil to the pan. And I'm going to put our chicken in there. Okay, now I'm going to put this in the sink, and I'm going to wash my hands again. Again, turning on the water, getting my hands wet, and then lathering for about 20 seconds. And you want to do this anytime when you're working with raw meat, just because you want to prevent that cross-contamination. So again, I'm getting the backs of my hands in between my fingers and under my fingernails, and then also getting parts of my wrist. And then I'm going to rinse, dry with a clean towel. And then I'm going to go back over and we're going to season our chicken. Now here I have a tablespoon of cumin, and this is something I already had in my pantry. It came in a larger container and I already measured it out. We're only going to put a teaspoon of this on the chicken right now. So I'm going to sprinkle this on. And then I'm also going to season it with some black pepper, just a little bit. And then with a little bit of salt. You don't need very much. And then I'm going to stir the vegetables. Now chicken is considered a lean protein, and when shopping for poultry you want to buy boneless and skinless chicken. That means that there's less fat and it's healthier for you and your body. Other lean meats are turkey, and again without the skin. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure that my chicken is all touching the pan so that it can cook. And now I'm actually going to put the top on it now so that the chicken can cook, and I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit. Now chicken needs to be cooked to an internal temperature of 165 degrees, and the safest way to check that temperature is with a food thermometer. This one's digital, so you just turn up the spoke and then it shows you the reading on the thermometer. Some other thermometers have the kind of the dial where you can read it, and that's perfectly fine too. You just want to make sure that you're getting it up to 165 degrees. Now these pieces are smaller, so they're going to cook faster, so it's not going to take as long as a full chicken breast would take. And when you take the temperature of meat, you want to make sure you're putting it in the thickest part of the meat to give you the most accurate reading of where it's at. Now chicken, the serving size for meat is 3 ounces, and that's the size of the palm of your hand, or the size of a deck of cards. Most Americans overconsume that much, so you just want to always be checking your portion sizes. And then we're just going to wait for this to heat up more. And then once this cooks further, we're going to add in our beans, our tomatoes, and our zucchini. And the reason why you want to add the zucchini in later is because it's a softer vegetable, and when it's cooked, it cooks pretty fast. So it's going to soften in a shorter amount of time than the peppers would and the onions will. So I'm just going to take it off. As you can see, the onions and the peppers are getting nice and soft. The chicken's cooking. We're going to let this cook for about 2 more minutes. And then we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients. So after a couple minutes, we're going to add in a teaspoon of taco seasoning. I just have the Great Value original taco seasoning mix. It's pretty cheap. And then we're also going to add in our zucchini, our corn, our beans, and the petite diced tomatoes like I mentioned earlier. And then we can add this in right now actually. This is our minced garlic. And then the recipe called for cloves, but I had this in my fridge, so I'm going to use this instead. I'm going to put in 1.5 tablespoons of minced garlic. And put that in the side with the peppers. And then I'm going to add another half tablespoon. There's 1.5. So I'm just going to mix in that garlic. It's starting to smell super good. The chicken is cooking. I'm going to flip some of the chicken so that the other sides of the pieces can cook. And then we'll let that cook for about another minute. So I just flipped the chicken over so that it could cook evenly on both sides. And then we'll give it about another minute. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, or you want to try this as a meatless option, you can definitely skip the chicken. This meal is totally personalizable. And you can add things like quinoa, brown rice, any other sort of grains. And quinoa is a good option because that can give you some protein, and it's also a source of complete protein, which means that it contains all the essential amino acids that need to be obtained from your diet. So I'm just going to let this sit for about 1 more minute, and then we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. So we'll just bring the rest over. So we have our beans that we drained and rinsed. We have our zucchini, our corn, and the rest of our seasonings. So I can hear it starting to heat up. I'm going to start using this towel now because this doesn't have any protective coating on it, which makes it hot. Yeah, the chicken is starting to look really good. You can tell it's being cooked more. You're not starting to see as much pink. which is what you want. So I'm just going to add in the rest of my veggies now and the rest of my seasonings. So in goes the zucchini. I might not add all of it so that we have room. I'm going to add in my beans. And my corn. Now the corn was frozen, so it might take a little longer to heat up. I'm just going to mix this in. So like I said before, you can cook this in any pan. You can use an electric skillet. You just want one with a lid so that you can keep the moisture in when you're waiting for the veggies to be sauteed and cooked. Now the chicken is still mostly on this side, and I'm going to leave it there so that it can still cook, but once it gets cooked a little further, I'll incorporate it in with the rest of the veggies. Now we're going to add our 1 teaspoon of taco seasoning and the rest of our cumin. And then finally we're going to finish it off with our petite diced tomatoes. Now these have some juice in it, so it'll add a little moisture to the meal. Then I'm going to mix that all in. With the rest of the veggies. And now this has to sit and cook for 10 more minutes. So after it's done cooking for 10 more minutes, I'll check back in with you guys for the final product. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes, and now I'm gonna check the temperature of the chicken to make sure that it's done. I'm just gonna stick it through one of the chunks. And it's over 200 degrees, so it's way over 165, so it's definitely done. And now I'm gonna finish it off by adding some shredded cheese on the top. I'm just gonna sprinkle this all over the top. And then I'm going to let it melt on there for a couple of minutes, and then it's completely done. Okay. So I priced out this recipe, and the cost for the whole dish is $18.38. Now this dish provides 6 servings, so it comes out to only $3.06 a serving. And that's the price if I would have gone out and bought all these ingredients, but I had some of these ingredients in my home, so the actual price would be less than that. So feel free to customize this recipe with things that you already have in your home. Now, for calories, 1 serving is 373 calories. For protein, there's 32.8 grams of protein, so it's packed with protein. For carbs, it's 30.2 grams, and for fat, it's 14.3 grams. So this is a really healthy dish with beans and vegetables and protein. And I encourage you guys to try it at home. I know that I love this dish, and I know that you guys will love it too. So the cheese is melted, so you guys can come and see the final product. And there it is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe, and I hope you guys try the same recipe at home.